Oh, there we go.
The broadcast is now live.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of the Liberty First Foundation's Roundtable for the week of Thanksgiving 2022. Tonight's November 25th, 2022. Jan, we're going to go ahead and start off with you because you have some specific questions for Frank. And Frank, I know, has to leave out of here early, so we're going to go ahead and kick off the ball rolling with you guys.
Oh, I appreciate that. Well, first of all, Frank and Jeremy, you guys are going to be a little happy. I found my gun.
Good news.
Nice.
Good news.
Excellent. Good deal.
It's the upgrade of the Taurus 62S. It's the G3C.
The G3C. Very good choice.
Yep, it's a little, about $30 more, but more rounds. And the guy said he believes it comes with 2 mags. So
Yeah.
that's good. So I was looking at, all the things, the case and what I'm looking at getting as far as for carrying and that kind of stuff. And then moseyed my way over to the bullets. And I started noticing on the bullets that there was either like a 115 GR or a 124 GR. And I looked at my roommate and I said, well, that's got to be like a rating thing. That's a Frank and Jeremy question. So
Frank, you want to get it or you want me to?
All right. When you see the GR next to a number on a bullet, it means green. It speaks to the weight of the bullet, the weight of the projectile, and certain guns either will function better or worse depending upon what green you use. Now, most target ammunition that people go to the range with on a just for training purposes are usually 9 millimeter or 115 grain, and they're a little less heavy, they're a little less potent, and the 124s generally have they're more weight to them, and they have the hell is going on here? I'm getting a lot of notifications for no reason. At 124 grains, they're a little heavier bullet. They're more potent. They have a little more power to them. So most people will use 124 grain as their carry ammunition and 115 grain as their target ammunition. However, it's not always the case that the heavier the bullet, the better the projectile. There are lighter grade bullets that I think like 95 grain, I think, is one of the measurements for 9 millimeter that fly at a much higher velocity than the heavier grain bullets. So you want to read every gun is going to be a little bit different, what the manufacturer recommends for what you want to carry in it. But usually 115, 120, 24, they're going to be the 2 most common rounds for carrying. You want to carry the heavier load, usually under most circumstances. Now, 9 millimeter, when you buy a gun, or any gun for that matter, some guns are rated for what they call plus P. Plus P or plus P are generally packed with a little bit more power than the standard round for a much, much higher velocity. But not all guns are rated to take plus P ammunition or plus P. So you have to read your manual and see what the gun is rated for. Now, you could have a gun that says, yes, it's rated for plus P, but you don't want to usually go more than 20 or 30 rounds of plus P at any given time. Like if you were going to go shooting for the day, just because it can handle that pressure load doesn't mean you should always use it. So people who carry guns that are capable of plus P will just carry those loads just for self-defense purposes. But it's usually for plinking and target training, you go with a lighter grain. For carry, go with a little bit heavier. If your gun is capable of plus P, use a plus P defensive ammunition for when you're carrying it, when you're gonna, when It's when it's on your person and you're just using it for defensive purposes.
Okay. Well, I
Right.
kind of figured it had to do with grade. Like I said, I don't know, learning the difference. What do you mean by the plus P or plus P? Is that like a different type of grade
It,
of
Well,
ammo?
well, say you have a regular 124 grain projectile for a 9 millimeter will travel about 1,200 feet per second. A plus P round might travel at 1,350 feet per second. A plus P might travel at 1,500 feet per second. It's going to be a faster projectile at the same rate, at the same weight, which means that it's going to impart more inertial damage on the target than a slower moving projectile would, because you have the same weight moving at a faster velocity means you have you know there's more kinetic energy hitting the target with the faster the round goes. Now, it the faster the round is not always a good thing. Uh, Sometimes a round can move so quickly that by the time it enters its target, like say if you're using a jacketed hollow point, if that round is moving so fast, it might push all the way through the target before it gets a chance to expand. Another disadvantage of plus P and plus P is that it has a much higher recoil. So getting a second and third shot on target is usually a little more difficult because the gun is giving you more recoil, so it's not as easy to tame. So for 99.9% of the time, if you're carrying a gun and you need it for defensive purposes, a standard velocity 124 grain jacketed hollow point is all the round you're going to need. If
Okay.
you're carrying 9 millimeter. So if you go to the range, you want to use a fully jacketed bullet, a full metal jacket. And if you're going to carry it for defensive purposes, you want to carry a hollow point, because you don't want to have to run the risk of having over penetration. Here's a picture of Hornady Critical Defense. I carry these. I carry a Lawman full semi-jacketed hollow points. Uh, there's a lot of them out there. Now you'll notice that when you buy ammunition that's for uh, defensive purposes, they'll usually come in either 20 or 25 round boxes, not a 50 round box. 50 round boxes are usually relegated for target ammunition, and they're half the price of defensive ammunition. But the one thing I can tell you that's absolutely critical, once you figure out what round you want to carry as a defensive load, what kind of hollow point that you want to carry, run at least one or two boxes through the gun. I know it's an expensive proposition because you're going to spend
New York
7
City in the subways.
Sorry.
When the
That's
story doesn't match a message,
the hell.
My system just screwed up.
Your split
Oh, good.
personality came back again. But if it's an expensive proposition to run defensive ammunition at the range, however, you have to know two things. Can you handle the recoil of defensive ammunition properly? You have to get used to it. And also, equally, if not more important, will your gun run defensive ammunition without problem? Equally, if not more important,
Mhm.
will your gun
So-
the hell?
Frank's 100% right, especially on that last portion. So I went and I saw a good deal on the Sig Sauer V Crown ammunition, and so I bought 3 boxes of it because it was a good price. And the opening of the hollow point in the Sig Sauer V Crown is massive. So I went to run some through what I was currently carrying was a Walther at the time. I was carrying that, and I had 1 magazine left of it, and I was like, yeah, why not? We'll shoot it and see how it does. Fire, jam. Okay. Flute, clear it, next one, jam. Clear it, next one, jam. Done. Dumped the ammo, went up front and bought some of that Hornady Critical Defense. Now, worked perfect for my gun. Doesn't mean it'll work perfect for yours. It's good ammo, but seriously, put a box or 2 through it if you can, because you don't want to find out the hard way that it's not going to work.
Okay.
Yeah, and some guns have a much stiffer spring inside of them, or the slide is heavier than others. That target ammunition doesn't run very well in it because it doesn't create enough back pressure in order for the gun to cycle properly. So some guns want you to use a heavier box of ammunition. I have my Beretta 92 FS Centurion that I used to carry as my primary self-defense gun will run target ammunition all day long. I have 70,000 rounds of ammunition through that gun. My Beretta 92, my competition gun that I inherited from my father, is one of the first Berettas ever to come into the United States, will not run 115 ammunition at all. And the only difference between the two guns is the barrel on one is about an inch longer than the other. And one gun won't run the ammunition, the other one will. And if I take the barrels out of the guns and switch them, then my carry gun won't cycle 115s because the barrel just doesn't like the lighter ammunition. It needs more stout ammunition in order for it to run properly. So whatever you do, just match up the gun to the ammunition and you should be fine. And always go for the, like I said, the most punch you can put in comfortably that your gun will operate, that's where you want to go. And you don't want to carry full metal jackets as your defensive ammunition.
No, there are states you can get in trouble if you have to use it and get caught with FMJ or from a full metal jacket, where if you shoot somebody with it and they see that's what's in your magazine, you can actually get in trouble for it.
Yeah, see, with Full Metal Jacket has a habit of what they call over-penetrating, where it doesn't have any expansive qualities to it. If it was just a lead bullet in that shape, when it enters a target, it's going to flatten out and it's going to expand. A hollow point is designed to expand and stop at a certain depth into the target. Full Metal Jackets, it's like a hot knife through butter. It'll just go. It'll keep penetrating and it'll go right through the target. And because it doesn't have any expansive properties to it, it doesn't do any critical damage to internal organs. So it'll have a tendency to go through and possibly hit whoever's standing behind the person that now. And it's funny because people like the state of New Jersey outlawed hollow points, where if you got caught in New Jersey with a round of hollow point ammunition, 5 years for each round that you got. And they didn't have it overturned until recently. People were trying to fight with Jersey forever, saying, well, hollow points are a safer round to use in a defensive situation because you have less risk of over-penetrating and possibly hitting somebody else. Jersey said, no, you're only allowed to carry Full Metal Jacket. Now, granted, there was only 85 people in the state of New Jersey that aren't law enforcement that were allowed to carry a gun, but they specifically made it so that you had to have Full Metal Jacket. And if you are somebody like me who looks into the worst possible reasons why they would do that, it's because somewhere Jersey wanted somebody to shoot somebody and have a round over penetrate and hit somebody else so they could say, see, look how dangerous these gun people are. Now they're shooting innocent people when they're shooting other. I don't ever trust the rationality behind a stupid law because I think it's meant to get you. I think they purposely do it to get you.
There is a possibility that the New Jersey law was modeled after the international law of warfare, because hollow points are not allowed on the battlefield. Okay,
Yeah.
Only full metal jacketed rounds are allowed on the battlefield. It is actually a war crime to use hollow points in a battlefield scenario. So that could be a possible rationale, even though I don't agree with it, why the New Jersey law was modeled.
Yeah, because believe it or not, the Code of Warfare states that you're not supposed to really be trying to kill your enemy, but incapacitate him. So according to the rules of law, it's better for you to incapacitate your opposition soldier and give that person the opportunity to recover and recuperate. Whereas in the civilian situation, You believe it or not, you're not really trying to kill anybody anyway. The object of self-defense firearms is not to kill somebody, it's to render the threat neutral. If neutral means that death happens, then death happens. If neutral means the guy drops his hands, drops his guns, and gives up, he's neutral. It's to put an end to the threat. That's it. Putting an end to the threat does not always mean killing somebody. Putting an end to a threat could have somebody means they just surrendered without you having to fire a shot. But as far as the Uniform Code of Combatants, they want to have the soldier have the opportunity to heal. Matter of fact, you can look back. The Nazis had a knife. It was called a trilobal knife back in World War II, where it was actually, if you're familiar with the Mercedes emblem, you have 3 points. Imagine that extrapolated into 3 dimensions, long, with a point on the end of it. They affixed those knives as bayonet to their guns. Actually, it was World War I believe. It made it physically impossible for a surgeon to repair the damage if somebody had gotten stabbed with one of these things. There's no way to treat that wound. There's no way to treat it. You can't field dress it. You can't stitch it. Surgically, the guys would bleed out. They outlawed that particular kind of blade as being too lethal for the battlefield. So under the same and there you go. And that's one of them.
That's nasty.
The Middle Eastern armies were using them for a while too.
Yeah, but you know that they don't exactly follow the Geneva Convention or anything either. So,
okay. So my best bet then, once I get it, because I know I told you, I've got the space in the backyard, but to first line really learn about the best ammo, I should go to the shooting range. So I have somebody there that can instruct me.
Well, that, and you then get to see a clear picture of what your gun does when you pull the trigger, because not every gun is dead accurate right out of the box, and it takes time to sight them in and get them pictured where you want them to, and get used to the feel of what happens and how you handle trigger anticipation and things like that. So there's a lot of reasons to go to a range. You're in a controlled environment. You got a professional who's willing to come stand out there with you and give you all the knowledge that he may have, and hopefully he's certified and knows what he's doing. But you can also go buy a box of Hornady Critical Defense and you try it and you go, that sucks, I don't want to do that again. So you go buy a box of different ones, one at a time, obviously, and then you find the one that your gun loves and feeds through no problem and you can handle, and you go, okay, I'll take one more box of that to take home with me.
Okay.
And here's another thing to remember. Okay, a gun that's sighted for Jeremy, if I fire it, more than likely I'm going to shoot off where Jeremy's aim point is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, everybody's aim point is different. So the weapon whatever weapon it is, needs to be 0 to you.
Battle site 0.
Yeah, it's just like driving a car. You can drive your car 1,000,000 miles and never have an issue. As soon as you jump behind the wheel of your friend's car, it's completely foreign to you. There's always a learning curve. But once you get familiar with your gun, learn your point of impact, your point of aim, your sight picture, and all the rest of that. Learn how the gun functions properly. There's also no replacement for dry firing. Dry firing is also very important too, so you get to know where the trigger breaks, get to know where all the controls on the gun are. You should be able to take that gun without looking at it and be able to just manipulate it with your hand to know how to eject the magazine, how to rack the slide, how to lock the slide back. You're just going to become familiar with it. It's muscle memory. Once you get all of that down, then we'll figure out the best round for you to carry, and you go from there. And hopefully you never find yourself in a position where you have to use it. But if you do, you'll be prepared for it, and you'll be the person that gets to go home at the end of that night.
Right. Okay. Well, the other thing I wanted to ask was, I know that you talked about possibly helping me get a discount. And I wanted to ask about that because were you talking about a rebate or an additional type of like discount? Because right now through the end of the year, they do have a $25 rebate.
Yeah, the rebates that you're going to get from any of the gun companies, you're not going to be able to combine them with something else.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one or the other. Now, some gun companies are going to be able to give us, come the beginning of the year, they'll be able to give us a coupon code that people will be able to use to order the guns, but you'll apply either the coupon code or the factory rebate. It's going to be one or the other. They're usually going to be about the same. If we get a coupon code for a gun from a gun company, it's going to be an all year round kind of thing. You know, that it'll be good for whenever you order it. Usually when they do the rebates, it's for this July, this June, this April. So they do it to try and get you in the door.
Right. Well, no, I wanted to ask because I know you had mentioned that the last time we had talked about this, and if, as you're saying, if it's basically one or the other, well, I'll just go for the rebate then.
Yeah, the rebates are good. You get the rebate. The best thing to do when you get the rebate, buy ammo.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, some of the rebates they do an instant rebate right at the cash register. Some of them, they'll send you back a gift card that you could use it wherever you want to. But whatever rebate you get, forget you even getting the rebate. Just make believe you spent that money. This way, when it comes back, hey, look at that! I can buy some ammo.
Right. Okay. Well, I appreciate it because, like I said, I mean, it's coming up pretty quick. I think it's going to be within the next couple of weeks. So,
Frank, what's the legality on shipping ammo, private party to private party?
It goes state by state. It goes.
Let me do some digging. I don't know if you looked at that picture I sent you the other night, but
yeah,
I have
we'll figure it out. All right, listen. In the meantime, fellas, Jen, I'm gonna have to cut out of here. My dog. Thank God you don't hear them because I'm on this little microphone thing. But my dogs are inside barking up a storm because I have a whole bunch of family that just drove up from Jersey today, and I have to go in and make myself visible for them. So
all right.
I got evicted from my office, so I'm in here. Oh, hold on a second. I'm getting visitors in the office.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, there was Charlie, and Charlie and Jake just ran into the garage. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna introduce you to my kids. This is JC. That's JC, and this is Charlie. Where's Jake? And that's Jake. Jake, my white wolf. He's
happy. They look very happy.
None of these dogs ever knew there was a garage in this house until 2 days ago when I cleaned it out. And now every time I turn around, they're in the garage with me. So, who knows? This is a new adventure.
Go be with your family.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Listen, God bless you, everybody. I'm happy everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I'm so happy to have you guys here with me tonight. And we will see you guys on the next upcoming show. So, you guys be safe and shoot straight.
Have a good evening.
Take care, Frank.
Bye.
Enjoy your time with family.
Thanks, kids. Bye.
So you guys see my shirt since Biden came out talking about wanting to get rid of all semi-automatics?
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to bring it up. I want to show everybody. There is something that's really insidious about what's happening with Biden right now. And I just want to show everyone. Whoops, wrong thing. Did they change it? No, not. It's just me being stupid with my computer. Hang on. There it is. Let's share this. So this is the search that anyone can do right now. It's on Google. You can just go and Google search it. Biden gun control. Real simple, right? So there's no trick to this. And what do you get as the top stories? Well, here's the thing. You've got Joe Biden renews assault weapons ban. Okay. It's an assault weapon. He's going after assault weapons again. Everyone's terrified of assault weapons. They're the problem, right? No. He went and was talking about semi-automatic guns are sick. And this is the trick that they're using. They're trying to clean this up. Because when you say semi-automatic firearms, like Joe Biden said, that means that, Jan, they want you to be defenseless. They don't want you to protect yourself. That means every woman in America is going to be defenseless. Everyone who doesn't have a revolver. So that means every police officer. That means the FBI and the security, the Secret Service that are protecting Joe Biden. He just called them all sick. All the women out there, all the men who are protecting their families, everybody who has a semi-automatic, that means a handgun, a 9mm, like he said on CNN when he was talking with Don Lemon at the town hall in 2021. It means 95% of everyone in America is sick because they are exercising the Second Amendment. And because that's insulting to 165 million gun owners in America, they have decided that they need to change the language really quick to convince people, no, he's talking about assault weapons. He
No, he's
doesn't mean
not.
what you well, this is why you see the language difference that's coming from the Guardian, that's coming from CBS News, that's coming out of Yahoo. They're changing the language so they can say, no, we're not talking about taking away your right to defend yourself. We're not taking away your Second Amendment right. We're just going to take away the assault weapons. No, that's a lie. He means your firearm. He means protecting yourself. He means don't you dare obey or think or question this and the consequences of it. He means that if you dare to exercise your God-given right as codified by the Second Amendment, you are sick because you're not obeying his commands, the party and the ideology of progressives. How dare you do that? You should be punished. Does anyone disagree with my assessment of that? That anyone can go onto Google right now and you will see the difference in the headlines and in the article for yourself.
Yeah, but he's
Well,
not.
Biden came out against certain semi-automatic weapons anyway. Okay, look what he's came out with on 9mm. Okay, 9mm.
Blow your lung out.
That's going back
9mm
to
handgun. Blow your lung out.
Right, and that was going back to when he was in the town hall with CNN and Don Lemon in 2021, which I was referencing. So this isn't new, but the problem is, even then he said 9mm, so people aren't thinking about all the other firearms that he's actually talking about. This time he made it plain English, obvious for everyone. If you think of what is a semi-automatic firearms, and they're trying to change the message. This is how they manipulate the public. They're changing the language before people can think it through and go, here's the consequence. This is what he means and how it will affect your life.
And New York is pushing to ban semi-automatic weapons as well.
Right, which means everything. It means protecting yourself, whether it's a handgun, whether it's a rifle, whether it's the quote unquote assault weapon, which is a brand new term since 1986, created in California, of course, semi-automatic rifles. Because no one's running around with a bunch of machine guns. He doesn't mean machine guns because, by the way, that's still legal. You can still buy a tank. You can still get an F-16, which people do own. You can still have a flamethrower, a rocket launcher. You can still have a machine gun, which thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Americans actually still have. No, this is about protecting yourself on an everyday basis. Women and families, men, you can't defend yourself if you happen to, especially if you happen to be urban, you happen to be a minority, if you happen to be a woman, if you happen to be poor. God forbid you dare to protect yourself like the Second Amendment says you can. He wants to deny it. And that's why he said very, very directly, semi-automatic firearm gun, instead of saying assault weapon. He gave away the truth. They're trying to cover it up before your eyes. And that's
Well, and the other thing people have to look at is the fact that it's not just it's not going to be police and military and CIA and DOJ and FBI and all the three-letter alphabets that are going to have this ban put in effect. It's about
IRS.
control. It's about control, taking
Mhm.
weapons away from law-abiding American freedom citizens.
Yeah, I agree. But do you guys do you see how subtle, and this is mostly for the audience, do you see how subtle the difference? It seems subtle. Seems like, oh, it's no big deal. No, because when he says semi-automatic, he means everything. When he says assault weapon, they're trying to make it sound like a small group. No, he means every American citizen, 165 million people. He's coming after you. And just like I've said on my program, I said on here, when is this all happening? After the election, when you can no longer do a damn thing about the people who are in power so that they can maintain the manipulation. Now you're finding out the truth, whether it's the economy, the recession, the food crisis. Now it's about your Second Amendment rights. You no longer can control what they're going to do, so they don't have to care anymore. They can be honest with you.
But do you think they have enough backing? I mean, they've only got what, like 3 weeks to get this through? Because they got Christmas and New Year's break coming up.
It's called lame duck session.
Yeah.
So in the next 3 weeks, the Democrats still have the majority in the House, the Senate, and the White House. So they have the power, as they have had all year, to be able to pass anything they want. They could have taken abortion, which I disagree with them on. They could have codified Roe v. Wade at any moment all year long. They're going to do it in this 3 week period.
Yeah,
Why?
but I don't think they're going to have enough Democrat backers for this, though, because there's enough Democrats who own firearms.
But there is, now that they just went out and they found one story that they're using to push this. They dropped the UVA story because it was a black shooter, so that didn't make it work. They dropped the Idaho story because that's a stabbing, doesn't fit their scenario. Now they have what happened in Virginia and Walmart. It fits the scenario. It imposes the fear that they want people to have. Why did Biden not say anything about North Carolina? Why did he say nothing about Idaho? Because it wouldn't allow him to say this, which means now that you're scared, let's go out and we'll go and ban all these firearms because people are scared properly now. It's a setup. This is a setup that the media has been waiting to have happen so they could do that. And they knew it was going to happen because every year during the holidays, people become the depressed people. Some of them become very suicidal or they become very violent. It's an uptick. It's every year. It's been every year since the history of mankind that we've had these holidays. We always see this uptick. It's absolutely normal in terms of the trend. And they're taking advantage of it to use the power they have before they run out of the timeline. These are my conclusions based on the facts. You guys can tell me if you think I'm wrong.
Well, no, and I agree, but it also is people keep wanting to talk about mass shooting this, mass shooting that, mass shooting this and that. But the overall violent crime has gone down to what? How many percent in the last 20 years, Mike?
Violent crime overall?
Yeah.
About 15% if we're talking national level.
Mm-hmm.
And even that, and that's starting to confuse things because what's violent crime, what falls under it, it's very vague. So it depends on how you want to qualify.
You said exactly what I wanted us to talk about. Violent crime is vague, just like gun violence crimes or gun crimes are vague. The toddler in the store gets his mom's gun out of her purse and shoots her. They consider it a gun crime. Somebody accidentally negligent discharges and shoots at somebody, whatever they can, it's a gun crime. They take suicides and they label it under gun crimes. And the problem is
in MS-13 versus the Crips, that's gun crime.
Yeah. Gang versus gang is a gun crime. And so they have this big fucking blanket term for it, and it covers so much when in reality the actual crime rate's gone down. The problem now is social media is out there and can absolutely blow it out of proportion and make it seem like this has never happened before in history, and it's all because of the Republican Party.
Well, they sensationalize this.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's going on is everybody has 24/7 access to this. Okay. And it pops up as lead headlines on Google. It pops up lead headlines on Yahoo. You go to CNN, lead headlines. You go to MSNBC, lead headlines. Even on Fox, lead headlines. So no matter whatever media source you're using, these are the stories that are leading. Okay. They're not happening any more often than what they used to happen. It's just now with the ubiquitous access that we have to all these media sources and the fact that everybody around us carries a cell phone, okay, on them. Okay. They have a computer with them 24/7 and they're constantly thumbing through that. Okay. And they're getting alerts on this stuff. So it's looking like it's an uptick in stuff, but really it's not.
No, it's a difference.
Okay, and that's the whole
And
thing.
I think one of the biggest things
Being
too
so
is the fact that
sensationalized that's making it look like it's a worse problem than what it actually is.
well, and I think one of the biggest things too is the fact that it's always the gun that kills people. It's never the knife. It's never the vehicle. It's never it's always the gun's problem.
Well, yeah, because those other things, they don't exist. Remember, when 2017, a young black woman in Las Vegas ran over 7 people, including an 8-year-old child, when in New York, in Manhattan, there was a guy screaming Allah Akbar in a pickup truck, ran into a school bus, ran over 11 people. When we have the Wakusha driver in Wisconsin who ran over 70 people. No, that's not. That has nothing to do with any of those problems that are the same root cause. No, they're all separate things. That has nothing to do with it. So they're not going to ban cars. They're not going to ban knives. But the gun, the gun means if it's held by a white person who may be Christian or otherwise, but especially if they're white, if they can allude to, even though they may not be, if they can allude to them being Republican in any way, shape, and form, even if it's proven false immediately afterwards, they're going to run with that story so that they can say, see, they're the bad guys. We warned you. They're evil. Give us your guns. Give us your rights. You can trust us. By the way, we're cutting the police. We're going to hire a bunch of social workers. We're going to open up the prisons and release 1/3 or more of those convicted criminals of those violent crimes. We're not going to investigate the illegal aliens that are coming into our nation with drugs and gangs. That's all okay because those are all separate things. Trust us because we're the government. We were elected. We have to be smart because you voted for us. And the media agrees with us. And anyone who disagrees, well, they're a domestic terrorist. They're evil. They're MAGA. They're bad guys. This is the setup they are using against people. It is these word games. I've been doing this 17 years. I'm very familiar with the word games that are used in this. It is on purpose to get to a specific outcome.
Well, look at what they're doing with the Colorado shooter. It came out that he hate crime and all the other crap they said, and then it came out that he said he was non-binary and a couple other things, and the leftists automatically came out and said, well, you can't believe him because he says he's non-binary.
Well, because it's part of their ideology.
Exactly.
3 or 4 of the last couple of publicized shootings, notice keyword publicized, because they're not talking about shootings in Chicago, Baltimore. They're not talking about shootings in LA, New York. They're not talking about just some of the publicized stories. The last 3 or 4 have all been connected to, in terms of ideology and online writing, either black supremacy or progressive ideology. And they're all supposed to be right-wing. And the moment that it comes out they're not right-wing, the story gets dropped.
Paul Pelosi is a perfect example. They tried to frame him as a right winger.
Yeah.
That story dropped pretty quick.
Yeah. Oh, there's proof that he has nothing to do with the right wing, and everything he's been doing has been nothing but left wing, far left ideology. Oh, drop that story. That's not important. We don't need to talk about that anymore. We don't need to know what's going on with that investigation. Next story. We found another story that's even more fearful, fear-inducing, and terrifying, and we can blame it on Republicans and guns.
Well, and notice how quick
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Notice how quick the FTX story dropped, and now we have more information coming out about Epstein's flight logs
That we should have had a year ago.
It's like, don't focus on this. Focus on this, because we don't want you to focus on this.
Yes, but notice they don't want you to, they're saying the flight logs. They don't say the black book that Ghislaine Maxwell already had, that the FBI has in their possession, that they could be going through investigating right now, because those people maybe have been complicit with the crimes we know have been already through the courts. No, we don't want to investigate that. Talk about the flight logs that actually say nothing about what crime may have been involved, where the black book does. Oh, yeah. It's a distraction. It's a means of turn away. Don't think about it.
Well, they're good. They're good at that. Every time you turn around, this is an existential threat. Oh, stop paying attention to this, because now this is an existential threat.
Yeah, it's all about, these are ways to manipulate people's emotions. So then when they suggest, oh, and we have the solution, we're going to do exactly the same thing we've been doing for 5 decades, just a little bit bigger. We're going to do it exact. And I always have to remind people, gun control is not new. We've been doing the same thing since, at least in some variation, since the National Firearms Act of 1934. We've just changed where it applies and expanded it more and more. But we've been doing the same exact thing since 1934. It doesn't work. All gun control being offered in the last half century is, you don't get to have a firearm. That's it. They're going to take away law-abiding citizens' firearms. It has nothing to do with criminals. It has no prevention on criminals, the crazed, the deranged. Doesn't stop them. Doesn't even try to. It only attacks law-abiding citizens. For 5 decades, it has never worked, and we know it doesn't work because there is absolutely no evidence. If there was any shred of evidence, any study, any survey, anything that showed that this even had a 0.5% effect, any of the gun laws, and all of them combined, if they even had 0.5% of effectiveness, they would be trotting that out on every single news media at every election saying, see, we were right, it works. You have to do this. They have never provided that evidence, that link, that source, ever, because they don't have it, because it never works. But you're not supposed to ask the question. You're not supposed to think about it. All you're supposed to do is obey as they take away your rights and freedoms to no benefit to the public. That's my position on that.
So, Michael, as a constitutional knowledge that you have, say they pass this, does it go to the Supreme Court and get overturned?
Marshall.
It would start in a federal district court first. Okay. And it would have to start there first, because there are only very specific things that will start on the Supreme Court docket. And that's based on laws written by Congress, and also what's defined in the Constitution. So until it goes through those district courts first, and then after it goes through those, then the Supreme Court has to decide whether or not it's going to actually hear the case when it actually gets there. Now, regardless of what the rulings are at the lower courts, it's going to be appealed all the way through. And by the time it gets up to the Supreme Court, like I said, then the Supreme Court has to decide whether or not it's going to hear that case. One way to force a case to be heard is if there's been conflicting rulings in different districts prior to it being appealed to the Supreme Court. So, like if the 9th District has a ruling upholding a law, and the 3rd District has a ruling basically repealing a similar law, then that case is mandated to be heard by the Supreme Court because there's conflicting rulings by lower courts.
So is this something that viewers and all of us should be calling our representatives and senators about, telling them what gives them the constitutional authority to take our guns away?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because even if you don't agree that the Second Amendment applies to the states, it absolutely applies to the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
And if you read the Second Amendment as it is written and as it has been defined, and also look at federal law prior to 1934,
mm-hmm.
you will see that there is no historical precedence for any federal ban on any type of firearms prior to 1934. Okay, that in and of itself puts the National Firearms Act suspect as well. Okay, except the way they wrote the National Firearms Act is it's a tax, not actually a restriction on firearms.
Yeah. And remember, how did they pass the National Firearms Act of 1934? Because even at that time, no one agreed. The nation absolutely opposed this. They were livid against it. But it was a culture and environment pushed by the media of fear. It was because of the St. Valentine's Day massacre and the coverage,
which was 1929.
Which was 1929, and it went through the courts to try and find a way. How do we stop the mafia? And now the mafia is attacking other gangs. This is insane. It's reached a level that's just induced fear in everyone.
And funny thing to know is, since then, okay, there were a lot of massacres that occurred via firearms by organized crime.
Yeah.
Well after the National Firearms Act was passed. The National Firearms Act did absolutely nothing to stop or even reduce the amount of attacks that organized crime was conducting at that time. What really stopped a lot of the mafia battles that were going on was the repeal of liquor, of the when they repealed the ban on liquor, a lot of that is what really curtailed a lot of the mob activity. Okay, it had absolutely nothing to do with any firearms legislation.
And the prohibition took away one of their key income sources that they were fighting over, mostly in Chicago, because Chicago, New York, LA. Why? Port cities that would be able to easily access these illegal goods, in this case, alcohol, and bring it into the public and disseminate it from there because they were major access routes. So again, it's not this was happening in every city across America. No, of course not. Most Americans were not affected, which is why most Americans said this isn't something we need to do. What do we have today? Chicago, Baltimore, LA, New York. What a surprise. Again, major cities that are key ports that allow importation of illegal aliens, illegal firearms, illegal drugs, that are major hubs that are controlled by Democrats still to this day, that are allowing these crimes to go through. And they're not stopping the criminals. They're coming after the law-abiding citizen. This is the problem. and they
And
go ahead.
just to correct you, okay, Section 234 is discrimination of person in uniform.
Yeah.
Section 242 is the actual section that you are referencing, which is deprivation of a citizen, depriving a person of their rights, as a conspiracy or a conspiracy to deprive a person of their rights. Section 241 is deprivation of rights under the color of law. So either one of those two sections could actually be applicable in this case. And actually, whenever law enforcement goes to enforce these laws, counties can actually step up against them. Okay, especially if it's federal or state level, counties can actually step up against them and enforce Title 18 USC 241 because it is a deprivation of rights under the color of law. And that is a valid thing that constitutional sheriffs can actually use, or a valid law that constitutional sheriffs can use to uphold the protection of constitutional rights, or rights protected by the Constitution, not constitutional rights, because these rights are unalienable. Okay, regardless of whether the Constitution protects them or not, these are rights that every one of us are born with. These aren't rights that are given to us by government. These are rights that we already have. And that's what we need to understand as a people and as a nation. Okay, government has no authority to grant you rights. We grant government authority, but government has no authority to grant us anything, actually. Okay, because their authority comes from us. So, in a sense, we are the ones with our rights, and our government is charged with protecting those rights, not depriving us of them.
It's kind of like why in the United States, and you'll see my point here in a second, is in the United States, citizens are innocent until proven guilty beyond a shadow of doubt. That is an inherent right you have from birth. You are born innocent, you stay innocent unless we can prove beyond a shadow of doubt amongst the 12 people of your peers that you are guilty beyond a shadow of doubt, because you were born innocent. You are always innocent. It comes from the Judeo-Christian beliefs that the nation was built on. But what we see more often today in the news media, in far left-leaning sources, they're in our colleges, they're teaching our kids to believe, well, no, you don't have inherent rights. You have rights from government, and that's why we need the UN. That's why they always quote the UN and human rights. These are rights from a government given to you, which means you lose. Under that basis, you lose the inherent right by birth of being innocent, and you're guilty because the government assumes you are guilty. You have no preposition of innocence. You're guilty because you were charged. You were accused. It's the whole point of Me Too. You are accused. Therefore, you are guilty until you can prove beyond shadow of doubt of innocence, which is almost impossible. And that's why the left adopts that mindset, because it empowers a higher body and not the individual. If I'm innocent, if I am presumed innocent by birth, then you must go through every step to take away any of my rights or to punish me. The burden is on the government because the power of the government isn't with the government, it's with the people. And therefore, the government can't just willy-nilly just accuse you of something and take away your rights and freedoms. They never have that inherent power. That's why Me Too was so important. It is reversing that inherent power base. It takes it from you and puts it in the hands of the government. You can be accused and punished. Same thing with red flag laws. You are accused and you are punished before anyone ever determines whether or not you're guilty. This is why it's so terrifying, because you have no right.
regardless of how many constitutional Bill of Rights they violate serving a red flag law.
Yeah.
In fact, I won't delve too deep into it for privacy reasons, but I was kind of talking to Mike and Frank just a couple weekends ago. I had a very dear friend of mine who's been going through a lot recently, and he's like, "What do I do? Do I call somebody? I don't know what to do. I'm worried about the stuff I have in my house." And I was like, "Stop. I'm going to come and get your stuff, and then I'm going to hang out with you for the night." So I went, I loaded up everything he owned into my car, and then I went back in the house with him, and I stayed there until he passed out at 3 a.m, and then got up at 5:40 the next morning, so I had to drive to Twin Falls, and I took everything he had to my house, and I'm storing it for him. I told him, I said, "If you call somebody, you will never see any of this shit again."
Mhm.
And so, or if you make somebody else so worried that they trying to help call somebody, you'll never see any of this shit again. So it just, I know what he's going through, and I understand, and I'm there for him, but I don't want him to lose his possessions because some jackass with a badge thinks he's the almighty and comes and takes his stuff. And that's not going to get him any help. That's all him going to make him do is feel like he's worthless, and now he can't have that stuff.
Well, that's why.
Nope.
And there's 2 studies that have been done about red flag laws. The first study determined that red flag laws have nothing to do with stopping suicide. They don't. They don't stop suicide. In fact, it is found that 46% of all suicides where they've used a red flag law on someone continue within a 5-year period, commit suicide anyway, just through a different means. It is insanely high percentage that is only matched by the number of trans people who kill themselves. It is an insanely high figure. It's almost unheard of. And that just shows you it does not work. The suicides still happen.
Well, I want to bring up one other point, okay? And we need to realize when the Constitution was written, and particularly when the Bill of Rights was added, everyone was guaranteed a trial by jury. That wasn't ever a trial by government. It was a trial by the people. Okay? So in other words, it was the people that determined whether you were guilty or innocent. It was never the government to determine your guilt or innocence. And now we've got a real big push from government and from progressives to make it so that the government determines your guilt or innocence.
Mhm.
And
Well, that's what they're doing to
never
the
the way
J6.
our country was founded upon.
That's what they're doing to the J6. They've been in jail almost 2 years now.
Yeah. But that's how they see how these are all connected themes. That the process is the same process applied in different aspects. So they're doing it with red flag laws. They're doing it with gun control in general. They're doing it with civil asset forfeiture. They're doing it with accusations in Me Too, accusations in J6. We're seeing this. They're normalizing this so that they can then, when it comes time to actually codify it, people say, well, wasn't that always the law? No one will blink an eye. And they're doing this not for our generation, not for Jeremy's generation. It's for Jeremy's kids' generation because they've never known anything different. They've already seen red flag laws being used every day. They've grown up with J6 being a fact, not a discussion in a law school. They've seen Me Too all their life. They've seen these things, and so they're normalized to it. And their answer is, well, of course we should do these things. Why wasn't it codified into law? It should be. Let's make it formal. This is insidious and is a way to destroy a society, a nation, a people.
I think
something else that they are doing now too is we're noticing that a lot more laws are administrative laws. Okay.
Yeah.
And as administrative law, that takes away the constitutional protection of trial by juries. So if it's administrative law, then they fine you, whatever, and they do it administratively. So then it's the government determine your guilt or innocence. And always under administrative laws, you are determined guilty until you prove your innocence.
Mhm.
If you have an EPA violation, which is an administrative violation, guess what? Until you can prove that you did not violate EPA law, you are guilty and you are subject to those fines.
Well, the
The
same thing
same
goes
goes
with
with
a speeding
that deals
ticket.
with OSHA, anything that deals with ATF. Most of these laws that are enacted are administrative laws. So they get to circumvent jury trials, okay, which again is a violation of our rights, okay, because we aren't supposed to be deprived of any of our rights, including the right to property, without being,
Yeah, I
oh
know.
boy,
I'm seeing it. It's
without a jury trial, okay, without being convicted by a jury of our peers. But yet, we see time and time again where we have agencies come in and submit us to fines. Okay, speeding. Speeding is a perfect example. Okay, where it is an administrative law. Okay, and if you go to court on it, it's not a jury trial. You're in front of a judge. Okay, and the judge determines your guilt or innocence.
A good way to
Okay,
look
and
at
why
it
is
is
that? It's because it's an administrative law. It's not because it's a criminal law.
right. A good way to look at administrative loss is really just a tax revenue source for whatever your local government is. A victimless crimes, if you will, like you said, speeding, some other violations that really aren't harming anybody, but because somebody says, "Well, if you do this, we're going to take money from you," and it's horseshit.
As a sidebar, just for a moment, people who may be watching this, you may have noticed that we started getting some spam hitting the chat. I want you to know something. There's been a change in the algorithms in social media since a week before the election. And since we've been getting back the results, that censorship is even worse. And I am noticing that on many channels, censorship that never appeared on comments and chats and live streams before are now targeting certain chats, certain live streams when they say certain key words. When you talk about gun control, when you talk about the government, when you're talking about laws and the jurisdiction, then all of a sudden I have noticed, and it's been happening to me on my Sunday live stream. I've seen it in several other live streams that people have had, that all of a sudden this is now appearing. This is to tell you, we are hitting on something that's very important, folks, because they don't do this regularly. They've changed the algorithm to do this when you say something to distract people, to try and turn people off or turn them away. This is now a new thing. It's a new tactic to try and throw you off. So if anything else, go back over the last 15 minutes of what we've been talking about and listen to it again after we're done, but listen to it again because that's the part they were trying to distract you from.
And the thing is we can beat those algorithms. The thing is all you have to do is share this. Mm-hmm. And the more you share our content, then the more people are going to see it. Even with the algorithms trying to hide it, trying to keep it out of streams, they can't keep it away from everybody if everybody's sharing it.
Exactly. If
okay, the algorithms only work on when they are placing feeds into posts or into news feeds.
Into search.
Okay. However, when you share our articles, our live streams, all this other stuff, that bypasses the algorithm. That automatically puts it into your news feed. Okay. Now it may not get as much attention in your news feed because of the algorithm, but it still gets out there and it still gets to more people. And if those people start sharing it, we can override the algorithms. But it takes a concerted effort on our part to do the shares, to increase the number of comments that are happening on a post or on a live stream. All of that stuff will work on bypassing the algorithm. The algorithm can only be written for what Facebook or YouTube actually places into feeds. It cannot stop what you share.
And I actually think it's going to be worse since Elon is opening more stuff on Twitter.
And that he's showing us what they were doing on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
It's the doors are open, Pandora's box for those big tech companies, for the left-leaning media that wanted to try and make you feel like, no, you've been alone. You're the only one who thinks like that. They always love to say, you're the only one. You're just an outlier. Except as we learn more, every time they keep showing up in front of Congress. They've been talking about this since 2018. And now we have Elon revealing more and more. This has been a concerted effort to isolate people and to make you feel like you're the only one, so that it's easier to take away your power. Think about it. How many times have you heard, and it almost always comes from the left, that say, your vote, I'm not going to vote because my vote doesn't matter. Almost every time you're hearing that, every time it's being talked about, it's from a left-leaning source telling you why your vote isn't as important as you think it is. And yeah, they'll always say, but you should come out and vote for us. But they're also emphasizing, but your vote doesn't really matter. They don't want you to think that there is a consensus. They want people who are on the right or even center right to think you're alone. You're the only one in the world who thinks like that. And yet we see Italy, Switzerland, Peru, the United States. It's a fact. People are agreeing with you. The United States, 3.5 million more people voted Republican and more conservative in 2022 than in 2018. Gee, I wonder why. There was a red wave. Was there a result of red? No. But there was a red wave. The nation, even in New York State, there was a massive flood of people who decided to vote red, to vote more conservative. We've seen the results, which means now you have to be given more fear as they tell you the truth. Oh, yeah, there is a food crisis. Oh, yeah, they are going to come and take your guns, all of them. Oh, yeah, they are going to try and mandate and control your health care. They're admitting these things. The recession is going to last far longer and be more deep than they ever mentioned before. But they have control, and they want to maintain this control, and they want you to be afraid so that you will obey without ever asking a question or ever considering the consequences of that. These are all different techniques to get to the same result. And again, we're talking about evidence here. This isn't conspiracy theory. We are going to the news media on this program, and we're showing it. And we are more than, I think everyone will agree, more than welcome to have anyone ask a question or challenge us on our sources and our reasoning.
Well, and now you have the New York Times and others coming out saying that Google and iPhone, Apple need to disband Twitter and everything. And I don't remember who it was, but somebody asked Elon today if he would come out with his own cell phone if that happened. And he came back and he was like, yeah.
Yeah, he said that. But where were these? Remember when they laughed when Parler opened up because of Twitter did the same exact thing to right-leaning conservative people. And the New York Times and the media laughed at them. The left laughed at them, said, "Oh, that's stupid. Yeah, your Twitter, your Rumble. Oh, that's a joke. That's just crazy. Truth Social, that's just crazy. That's stupid. It's going to fail." The second the same rules, not different rules, the same rules were applied to them in the same way it's been applied to anyone they don't like. Oh my God, we've got to shut this down. We've got to start up something new. We've got to run somewhere else. Gee, wasn't it all a joke? Weren't you telling us that, oh, just suck it up and deal with it? Oh, no, because it's their power, not our power. You're not, because they get to ask the questions and make the statements. You get to just agree with them, obey, and don't question. It's just interesting how they do that. And every time that you bring a challenge to them, the answer is, oh, well, you have a challenge? Oh, okay. Well, you're evil and you're the bad guy. That's just stupid. You want to talk about conspiracy theory? There you are, because that's just stupid. That answers nothing. You're just a bad guy. I'm going to call you an ist and a phobe. How dare you question? It's my First Amendment right. Of course, I'm going to question you. I got that right. Prove me wrong. Show me the evidence to reach a different conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
No, I have a better thing. I'll just silence you.
Well, I'm going to sidebar on that exactly, or partially is. So that is exactly why we need everybody's help with this.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are going to silence you every way they know how. And eventually they're going to find ways to silence us. And without your help, they're going to keep pushing harder and harder against us and making it difficult for us to get the information out to you. So the best thing that you can do, one, is share everything that we put up, obviously. But another thing you can do to help is go to our website, listed at the bottom, and sign up for an annual membership. It's only $15. It'll get you exclusive content. It'll get you early access to content. It'll get you access to some of Mike Marshall's courses coming up. It'll get you access to a lot of stuff that will help us to help you and get this information out there. But it'll also help us to fight this nonsense that we're dealing with, and it'll help us to get to more places and get more information, and it'll help us with our partnerships with people like No Soundbites Allowed. And Vass is a huge asset to us, and he's a great person to have around, and we'd love to be able to go out and support what he does as well. And he has shared the daylights out of this membership drive that we're doing, and we appreciate that. And Jan has shared the membership drive, but without you guys, we're nothing, and we need to be able to get this information to you as much as possible. So go to the link below, go on the page and sign up and share it with your friends and get them to sign up. And as a added benefit to being a member, you can see the there we go. This little Henry Golden Boy on here, custom engraved, will be gifted to one of our new 250 members as well. So added bonus for you, but help us. It's not about the giveaway. It's not about us. It's about us helping you and getting the information out to the people that they deserve, and making sure that we can do everything for you that we can. Mike Marshall, do you want to add anything before I close this window down?
I do. I definitely want to mention. Remember, one of the other things.
Well,
that this
here's the thing.
Go ahead, Mom.
Okay, is there's only so much we can do. We have a finite amount of resources to us. We have time. A finite amount of people that can reach with. Okay. For one, becoming a paid member of the First Foundation allows us to start leveraging our time, our money, our resources in ways that we can't do now. Okay. As we add more finances to our cause, it allows us to hire people to help us with research, to help us writing articles, and things like that. It helps us to pay for giveaways like this to help entice other people to join. Um, I mean, there's multiple advantages by you helping to support us financially. Um, it's not so that Jeremy, myself, Frank, and other people that are involved in this are paying ourselves. No, we do this without any pay. Okay, we do this, and often we are paying to do this. Okay, but our finances only go so far. Okay, and because Jeremy and myself and Frank and Michael and Jan, we work full time. Okay, when we have to work 8, 10, 12, 15-hour days, that limits the amount of time that we actually have to be able to spread this message of constitutional restoration. It it limits what we are able to do. Okay, it limits our time to research laws that are being enacted. Okay, as a result of those limitations, sometimes things slip through the cracks that we really should be discussing, but because we don't have the time or the people to readily find all this information out, we're limited. We're hamstrung. Okay. And the way that we can change that is by you guys getting involved and getting involved financially. Okay. It's not so that we can derive an income from this. It's not so that we can get rich because you guys are paying us. It is so that we can actually get the word out more effectively.
Well,
And that's what it amounts to.
let me piggyback off that, Mike. As an example of one of the things that we can do because of your support of the Liberty First Foundation, remember, we have a bill that we are proposing about effective election reform, something that will engage you, that will reinforce your power on picking who's going to run and who gets elected across America, whatever your belief may be, to put the power of elections back in your hands because your vote matters. We've been working on that. We've talked to you about it since the last 2 weeks. We've said, okay, we had the idea. We wrote up the initial framework of the legislation, which I believe will be on the Liberty First Foundation website, the L1F.us website tomorrow, if I believe correctly, so that you can see this.
That is the goal, to have it up tomorrow.
Great. And we're going to have that as soon as possible so that next year we are going to send this out with your support. We're sending out that bill, that legislation to 537. There's 537 members of Congress. We're going to make sure every single one of them has a copy. And we're going to ask every single one of them whether they agree with you having the power over the elections and the petitions and who's going to be having debates, or whether they disagree and to tell us why if they disagree, so that you know who's supporting the Constitution and your rights and freedoms. But that takes money. It takes money, time and money. Lawyers, mailing it, takes a lot of work. Your support makes that all possible. So that's the concrete example of where your money is going to. So I wanted to add that in there. So,
and I appreciate that.
And we appreciate Doll's support in doing this patch drive as well. That's awesome, Doll. We really appreciate that, and we appreciate support that people like Doll and Agent Black and Jan Rains have given us since we started this. Jeremy came on board because he believed in our message. Frank and I founded this back in 2018, and we've been going hard at it to push us and to bring this message to people Actually, we started before that. We actually founded the Liberty First Foundation in 2018, but we've been working diligently even before then to get the message out about our Constitution, about what people need to do civically to become more engaged with how our government operates. And the messages that you always hear from the media and from the politicians is you're just the people. The only thing that you can do is vote. No, there is so much more you can do. And that's where we come in is we teach you what you can do besides voting, besides calling your representatives. There is a ton of things that you can do locally and nationally that can actually have an impact on how our government operates. The real problem in the United States isn't a red versus blue problem. It is a problem with the people not being involved with government and looking towards government to solve all of our issues. No, our country was not based upon that ideology, and we need to go back to the ideology of what the foundation of our country was. And the foundation of our country was the people solve the issues, the people solve the problems, not government. And once we get the people back to solving the issues that we face as a nation, we will find that we are the greatest nation on this planet, without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
But the more we rely on government, the less great we are. Plain and simple. Okay? Government is inadequate to solve many of our issues.
Government causes a lot of our issues.
Exactly.
With that being said, Lindsay is not feeling well and asking me to bring her up some soup and tea. I'm going to head out and go tend to her, but I'm glad I got to come on tonight. Last Friday was a bust, but here tonight, so.
Well, you had the wedding celebration, and of course, family comes first. Always.
Mm-hmm.
So long, very long, very draining couple of weeks, but back at it again like we always do because we don't give up because we're here for you, not for us.
Well, exactly.
So,
okay, and that's the thing and as long as we have one person supporting us, okay, one person listening to our message, we're going to be here.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be putting that
Absolutely.
message out.
Absolutely.
Yes, I agree with Dahl. We do hope that Lindsay starts feeling better and go take care of her. And we are glad that you were able to show up tonight, Jeremy, and be on the show.
Yeah. Good night, everybody.
Good night, Jeremy.
Good night, Jeremy.
Good night, Jeremy.
Did you hear McCarthy came out? I don't know if it was yesterday or today, saying that the first day of the new Congress, they're reading the Constitution on the floor.
That's nice, but no, I didn't hear about
good.
it.
I think that should happen every session.
Yeah. Never
I
hurts.
didn't hear about it, but I think that's a great idea. I think that should happen every session. And actually, I think that should happen every time Congress meets. It doesn't take that long to read through the Constitution. Okay. And I think that is an awesome idea. Okay. I think that should be
the only issue with it is the Democrats are going to sit there going, well, we don't agree with that. We don't agree with that. And we're trying to change that. And I mean, you guys have said it numerous times, whether you're on the platform or not. I know I've said it numerous times, whether on the platform or not. The Constitution is written to be followed, not to interpret.
Well, exactly.
But that's the thing. I want, if the Democrats want to say, oh, I don't think you have a right to own a firearm and defend yourself, fantastic. Let's have that conversation. Not the media impression of it, not the bias and the fear mongering about it, not an autocrat like in California, in Michigan, in New York State with Kathy Hochul, where they have emergency powers and they get to decree something that no one has a right to even see before they've already passed it. No. Let's have the discussion. Let's have this open discussion. And when I ask them, because it always winds up, whenever I ask these politicians, all right, so you're going to harm minorities, women, the poor by your policies, because that's the one thing I can point to in all of these laws that has consistently happened. You have disenfranchised women, minorities, and the poor every single time. Do you have an answer to that? They never have an answer. They change the subject because they don't want to talk about it. Let's have that discussion. They want to say, no, you don't have a right. Okay, explain to me why I don't have it. Don't tell me why you don't like firearms, because they seem to, they always like to paint it like, oh, if we don't pass this, you will never have the right to not have a firearm. No one's requiring you to have a firearm. It's your choice. It's part of your freedom.
Well, that's what they're trying to do with the overturning of Roe.
Yeah.
Okay. They're trying to say that when Roe was overturned, it made abortions illegal across the United States. No, it did not.
Yeah, that's a lie.
Okay. It gave the power back to the states to determine whether or not they want to allow abortions. Okay.
Yeah, you have the right
Instead
to
of forcing all states to have to allow abortions, it allowed the people to make that decision.
Yeah, but the funniest thing about it is they've got 3 more weeks to go.
Yeah.
They want to pass gun legislation. They don't want to pass abortion, because there's an article I saw today that said they're going to focus on abortion for the 2024 elections.
Because it will get them votes. It's the same thing about when they promised all the students, if you vote for us, we will give you money. We will take care of your student loans. And as soon as we got past the election, they suddenly said, oh, by the way, it's unconstitutional. We can't do it. Oh, yeah. Oh, well, gee.
Well, no, he's put a pause on it until next year.
Because he will again come out and say, I will do this if you vote for us. You have to vote for us. This is it's manipulation. It's a trick. Give us your votes, and then we might do something for you.
But the saddest part of all of it, though, is both sides do it. It's got to stop on both sides.
Oh, yeah. At the moment, we're pointing out the Dems doing it because they're in power.
Right.
And they've been very public about it. I don't agree with it with any side. But the example right now, and why am I focused on Democrats and abortion, the student loan debt, and firearms? Well, that's what they're attacking right now. And if it came from the Republicans, I'd say the same exact things. I beat up Mark Rubio when he decided to support red flag laws, and I pointed out all the flaws in that legislation, because it doesn't matter whether it's coming from the right or the left. It's a bad law that takes away your rights and freedoms and puts the government above you. I don't care who's supporting it. It's still a bad legislation. So I don't want people to think, oh, you're just beating up on them. No, I'm beating up on them because it's bad legislation. It's bad for our freedom and rights. And if Republicans do the same thing, I'll come after them too. And we have this lame duck session, and it is indicative of what they really believe. If they believed in abortion, they'd have already passed it. If they thought it was absolutely essential to people's rights and freedoms, it's not, and they know it, and that's why they don't care. It'll get them more votes next time. Same thing with the college student loans. They don't care. It'll get them more votes the next time. Gun rights. They don't care unless people are afraid. And every time, the only time they ever pass gun legislation, firearms, Second Amendment legislation, it's only immediately in the wake of some kind of well-publicized media frenzy on some kind of incident that specifically and it's absolutely targeted to the public to make them afraid. Every single time. They never pass gun legislation when the media isn't talking about some scandal, some scandalous, horrible event that had just happened that they demonized Republicans, conservatives, and Americans with firearms. It's the only time. It tells you what their focus is. It's not about protecting anyone. It's about manipulating.
Dal, are you talking about the crisis that Mike brought up on Sunday? Taking our farms?
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's another one. I don't know, Mike Marshall. Did you know that?
No, I haven't heard anything on that.
Okay. It got passed in September. I believe it was September 9th. On my live stream this Sunday, I just covered it. The USDA has decided that gardens in your backyard, in an empty lot, on a piece of your property can be qualified as the people's garden, which makes it under the rule of the FDA, essentially classifying anything. Your windowsill is considered farmland, essentially, and under the purview of the USDA so that they can collect that food and redistribute it as the government decides to do. Isn't that something? At the same time that they're telling us there's no food crisis, but if you happen to grow your own food, we can classify it as a people's garden, which is under the purview of the USDA, a department so that it doesn't go in front of Congress, so you don't get to vote on it. They just claim it, and that means that they can go in and take your food that was supposed to be for you and your family, and they can take it away from you and redistribute it wherever and whenever they want, probably to illegal aliens that are illegally entering the nation, but wherever the need might be.
Well, again, it goes back to my statements earlier that most laws that are coming out today are administrative laws. And as a result, if you violate them, actually, even if you are just suspected, you have to prove that you abided by such and such a law. Otherwise, you are fined. Okay? They don't have to prove that you violated such and such a law. You have to prove that you complied with such and such a law. Okay? This USDA community grants or gardens. Again, is one of those things that if you refuse, all they have to do is come in and accuse you of refusing to comply with these community garden programs, and you have to prove that you complied. Otherwise, you're automatically guilty. Okay? And the way that you have to prove is show that you allowed so much of your garden, whatever they deem, could be up to 100% of it, that you provided your garden to other people other than your household.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I know in that paper that you had pulled up Sunday, Mike, if you read on further in it, it said you had to register for that. But how long is it going to take them to say, oh, no, we're just going to come take it?
Well, the bigger thing is not the registration, but the fact that they can classify anywhere that is where food is grown by an individual. Now, the registry, that's temporary. How long does it take? I mean, this is a departmental regulation. So literally, they can write at any moment and take out register and just say classify.
Right.
So
and again,
that's why I focus on what are they classifying as farmland, your windowsill. Anything from the size of your windowsill to to a farm, whether it's it
wouldn't even have to be your windowsill.
It can be anywhere.
I know a lot of people that grow food in their houses on hydroponics.
Yeah, and that would
that would be also classified,
right?
As such.
And once it has that classification, now it's controlled by the FDA. What they did in that law is establish this is the classification that gives them power. And if you accept that, then they can change the rules anytime they want and say, okay, and today, now that you accept we have that right, we can use that right anytime we want. That's why it's scary.
And as people that have followed me for any length of time know, I agree with any of these executive agencies. Okay. I disagree with all of them because, number one, they enact laws outside of the Constitution. Okay. The Constitution is very specific that all legislative powers are to be held by Congress, consisting of a Senate and a House of Representatives. Okay. Very specific. And once you start enacting laws under executive grant or executive agencies, you are in violation of the United States Constitution. Plain and simple.
And right on time.
Okay. And the biggest
right on
reason
time, Mike.
why. What was that?
I was going to say, right on time, just as we're talking about the USDA assuming power and that they don't have that right and how they will abuse it, bang, here comes 3 spam messages all in a row. Distraction. Don't pay attention. Well, no, here's something so that they can then come to us and say, oh, your site's pushing pornography and spam. We can deny people from seeing it. We got to shut it down because you don't have control. Stop talking about the fact that the USDA doesn't have the right to declare your food as farmland that they can take. Right on the, I tell you, this is the new algorithm. They're proving it for us. How dare you say this? It's insane. Sorry. I wanted to just point that out to people so they can see it real time.
Well, and you guys heard about China trying to get land in. It's quite a bit of land. I think it's 2 or 3 farms worth of land. I think it's in North Carolina by the military base. And right now they're talking about how that would be national security issues because of drones. And well, who the hell are you to allow China to come here and buy our land? Bad enough Bill Gates is buying it all up so he can make us eat bugs.
No, it's part of the economic process.
And,
according to them. Go ahead.
Again, I'm going back to we have to get rid of these agencies. Okay. And we have to start requiring Congress to do the job they were elected to do. Okay. And these executive agencies, the ATF, the FCC, the FAA, USDA, the EPA, SEC. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Okay, to the point that the federal government doesn't even know the number of executive agencies that actually exist. It has gotten so out of hand that the federal government doesn't even know how many agencies there are.
Yeah, it's because our government's too big. It's far too bloated. Everyone can. It's bloated so much that corruption is rampant, and that corruption doesn't want anything to stop. It's like a cancer. You can't stop it by when you keep feeding it, it's going to keep growing. And that's why we have you never see an agency get less money any given year. You never see them shrink the size. The IRS isn't having less employees. They have more of them. They have guns now. For doing books and math, they need a gun. Really? Okay.
Yeah, the IRS added 87,000 agents.
Yeah. It's never shrinking, and their budget has to go up because they have 87,000 new agents, and they have to have a bunch of them have guns. Oh, we got to spend more for that and spend money on them training. They get to have semi-automatic firearms. You don't. But the guy in the IRS who does math has to have a firearm, and he has to be trained in that firearm to government standards, whatever that may mean. And it's coming out of your pocket. And now we have to have, that means they have to hire instructors for them. They have to have someone, a gunsmith, to maintain these firearms, someone to make the bullets and count the bullets and distribute the bullets. Notice the bloat that's going as a side consequence. I just barely touched on this. And all of a sudden, we see more bloat, more companies involved, more people getting paid that don't need to be paid because there's no reason for this to happen in the first place.
Well, and then people forget who's paying for it all. We are.
Yeah.
We're going to take your gun rights away, but you're going to pay to make sure all them other people that we're allowing to have the guns so we can keep you down know how to use theirs.
Yeah. That's exactly what they're doing. And it's shocking. Go ahead, Mike.
Exactly. Okay. And if we actually were to reform our government back to what is actually authorized under the Constitution, our tax burden would decrease substantially, probably tenfold decrease in our tax burden, or the amount of tax that we'd have to pay to the federal government. We would probably see our deficit go almost instantly away. Okay. The amount of debt that we are currently in would drop substantially in the coming years. Just if we were to simply get our government back to its actual constitutional authority. And there is a reason why the framers of the Constitution wrote the various departments how they wrote them. There's a reason why they limited the power of legislation to the Congress. Okay, that was so the people or their representatives were the ones actually initiating laws, not for these outside agencies that have no accountability to voters, to the people. Okay, and in most cases, no accountability even to Congress. Would not be able to enact laws. Okay, and we see all the time on C-SPAN and on other venues how we see all these congressional hearings going on. But honestly, there is not a single time when we have seen anybody face any consequences from any of these congressional hearings. Not one that I can recall.
I can't recall. How many times has Google, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter?
Oh, no, I'm talking
showed
when
up.
we have congressional agencies on FEMA, DHS, NSA, ATF, the CIA, FBI, USDA, EPA, CPS.
Well, because they all go up there saying, well, I don't have that information. I don't know that information. You know, they're all full of shit. They know the questions to the
And there's never been one time when any of those people brought to testify in front of Congress has ever been held accountable. Not one time. There's not been one person fired.
Because half the people that are sitting on Congress are getting their pockets lined by the people that are sitting there testifying.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know that you can't become a millionaire on a government salary unless somebody's in your pockets.
Not with their salaries. The salaries do not allow it.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. But half of Congress are millionaires, if not multimillionaires.
I mean, these are the reasons we split from England. I've said for over 20, 30 years, no taxation without representation. You sure the hell don't represent us.
No, they don't. But it's amazing. But circling back to what we were saying way earlier, towards the beginning of the program, This is all about the manipulation. You're not supposed to question these things. You're not supposed to think about these things or notice that this is happening on multiple levels in multiple areas, and they're all connected. Not in
And this is exactly why we have to educate. That's why we're here every week talking about this stuff. Okay. And this is why we need your support. Okay. Because we only reach so many people. However, you can help us reach even more by sharing our content, by sharing these live streams. Okay. Letting your people know, people that you're in contact with, letting them know about the Liberty First Foundation. Okay. Invite people to join the Liberty First Foundation because we are limited in our reach. Okay. However, we can actually leverage our reach with your help. If you like, share, comment, hit the bell so that you're notified when we're live. All this stuff. You do that, and it helps us get more exposure. Okay. It allows us to reach the husband and wife that are sitting there trying to figure out what they're going to do because their taxes were increased this year. And now they have to figure out how they're going to pay these increased taxes. Okay. We can teach you how you can start having a voice. And if nothing else, we can be your voice. But you have to give us the authorization to do so. And one of the ways that you can give us authorization to be your voice is by becoming a member of the Liberty First Foundation.
Well, Michael, I think it's important too, talking about that again, that you point out, like you did before, about the more, how did you put it? The more members we have, the easier it is to get heard, or something like that.
Yes, the more members we have under the Liberty First Foundation, the more listed members we have, the louder our voice becomes. Okay, and it's simple. Okay, the NRA has a voice in Congress because of the number of members it has. The Gun Owners of America has a voice with the politicians because of the number of members they have. Okay, if you want actual reform of government back towards the Constitution, then we need the numbers to help support that. Okay, and we get those numbers by having members.
Yeah, and that's critical. I mean, whether it's trying to put bill legislation in front of them or stopping them from trying to take away our rights, it's about support. It's about letting them know we're watching them, that we are a watchdog on them, something that the news media is supposed to be in the first place. That's why they're the fourth estate. That's why they have extra exemptions according to law, so that they can watchdog the government. Because if we don't pay attention to the government, if we don't call them out, if we don't question them, we lose. That's why it's so important. Why membership and viewership, likes and shares, support and subscriptions are so important, because it reminds them they can't just do stuff. They can't, like in the USDA, they can't just call it, well, that's a farm, so we can take the food. We can't let them get away with these things. We have to call it out, because I guarantee you, I'd say 96% of this nation had no idea that in September, the USDA said, oh yeah, your windowsill is now a garden, your hydroponic plant, your backyard, it's all farm. And they have control over that. They have jurisdiction over your property. 96% of Americans don't know anything about that until the day they say, oh, and by the way, since we have jurisdiction, we're also going to take the food because now we own the food. And they're going to show up at your door and take it. People say, Mike, that's just not possible. That's just insane. Except we're in a food crisis. We have no idea when that food crisis will end. And what's stopping them from doing that? The goodwill of the government? The same goodwill of the government that says women and minorities don't get to defend themselves? That goodwill? I don't think so. The same goodwill where Biden comes out and says half the nation are evil domestic terrorists and extremists because we simply don't agree with him.
The same government that tested biological and chemical weapons on United States citizens.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
This is the government that
same
you are
government
trusting.
the same government that currently is using an experimental drug to a vaccine to control us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. This is the government that you are trusting. And government inherently should be distrusted. Okay. By its very nature, government should be distrusted. And it is up to us to hold our government accountable. Because government will never hold itself accountable. And we see it time and time again. I was just talking about it on this very show. We see it. Every time we have congressional hearings over any of these executive agencies, when I want somebody to name one time in history when any executive agency has actually been held accountable through Congress for some act that they did.
The closest in my memory was back in 2014. As a result of the investigation into Benghazi, several of the agents were reassigned within the foreign department. They were reassigned into different positions. No, not one person lost their jobs, even though every report that has been done about Benghazi has shown that there was extreme negligence on the part of the government, that they failed to protect people ahead of time and during, and that they had full knowledge that they lied to the public, that they knew it wasn't just some kind of video response or a protest, but was an armed assault. Everything has proven that the investigation's already been done. And not one person was found guilty, even though we know the government was at fault. We know that it was a failure of the administration. We know it was a failure, to be honest, to the American people.
Actually, Dahl brings up the IRS being reprimanded for weaponizing against the Tea Party.
No, they weren't.
No, they weren't. Okay. In fact, the IRS is still being weaponized today. Okay, against enemies, quote unquote, enemies of the government.
Lois Lerner, which is a specific case you're talking about, Lois Lerner, the investigation into her and her department with the IRS under the Obama administration, when they specifically and has been investigated and proven targeted conservative and right-leaning charity organizations because of their political ideology, she never lost her job, nor did any of the team under her lose their job.
And nobody has been held accountable.
No.
Like I said, I cannot recall any time in history when anybody has actually been held accountable under any executive agency for something that they've done.
Well, it's not just the agencies either, though. I saw an article today. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but in Seattle, they actually convicted a BLM member and a few others of the riots.
Yeah.
Did they get jail time? No, they got a suspended sentence.
But again, BLM's not government. Okay, and we have to, I'm specifically talking about government accountability.
Now, if you want, that would be the prosecutor. the prosecutor failed to properly request, because before the sentencing, the prosecutor is supposed to advocate for the public on someone who is guilty, has been proven guilty, admits their guilt, because I did see the article in the news reports on this in Seattle. She admitted the guilt. She admitted she did it. That was a crime. And the prosecutor failed to say, she admits this. She knows she's wrong. This caused damage to the society, to our trust in our government, and into our faith in each other. She needs to be punished. And instead said, oh, well, it's okay. We're perfectly fine with, letting this go. That's the failure of the government. That prosecutor should be fired right now. Should be gone. Just like the prosecutor who said, oh, I don't want to prosecute these laws because of someone's skin color. Well, you are a racist. That is a racist policy. You're gone. Goodbye. Equal opportunity laws. You violated them. You're fired instantly. And anyone else in your department that agrees with that, they're fired too. This is what should be happening. Instead, the media is saying, well, isn't that great? See, justice was served. Oh, yeah, everyone's happy. Except the people who had their businesses burned down, the people who were terrorized, the apartments that were taken over, people who were taken hostages as with the autonomous zones that broke every law, local, state, and federal. Oh yeah, none of them got justice in this. For someone who admitted guilt, it's not even like, oh, well, this was questionable. They admitted guilt, get to walk away free. How's that justice? Oh no, it's social justice, which means it's not just at all. My opinion.
Well, we can continue to talk until we're blue in the face about all of this. And until the people actually start saying enough is enough. And I'm not talking just a small percentage or fraction of a percent. Until the people actually start standing up against government and saying, hey, you guys don't have the authority to do this. We never gave you that authority, so you can't do it. Then we'll start to see some change. But until that happens, we're going to see more and more of this happening. Okay? We're going to see out of control agencies like the USDA going way beyond their scope of power and scope of authority. We're going to see changes in definitions in order to manipulate laws to start saying something completely different than what was originally passed. We see this time and time again. We see this over and over and over again, how the EPA changes its rules because they change the definition of a word. Okay, and they do this outside the scope of Congress, which is exactly what Congress is there for. That's why we elect these people every 2 years.
Well, and how many
But
laws
yet
do they pass in the middle
continue
of the
not
night?
to do their jobs.
I'm sorry, Jan, what was that?
I said, how many laws do they pass in the middle of the night? We're going to have a
Well, that
2 hour
often
discussion.
happens.
We're going to pass it in the middle of the night.
Actually, honestly, most of the laws that are passed at the federal level are for spending. Very, very few laws passed at the federal level by Congress involve legislation that actually create new laws.
Yeah.
Okay. Most new laws that are enacted in the United States are enacted by one agency or another.
They're regulations, not legislation. There is a difference, yeah. Legislation has to be voted on. Regulation, well, it's like the USDA. They just say they can do it.
Okay, and actually that is is still enacting a law, and legislation is to enact laws.
Yeah.
Okay, and these laws are being enacted by agencies that have zero accountability to anyone.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay, and that's where we have lost control in the United States. Okay, you think your vote matters? Your vote has zero impact on the EPA. It has zero impact on the USDA. It has zero impact on the ATF. It has zero impact on Homeland Security. It has zero impact on the FBI. It has zero impact on the CIA. It has no impact. Okay. You vote for somebody to represent you, and all they do is determine how to spend your money.
Well, no, I disagree with you there, Mike. And let me clarify why. Yes, your vote doesn't affect these agencies. Your vote affects the people who fund and control those agencies, who set up the direction of those agencies. See, the ATF, just going back 5-6 years ago, wasn't, well, actually before the Obama administration, had a different effort. They weren't going after mom and pop the way they are doing it now. Remember, the most recent ATF head of the ATF under the Biden administration was in the courtroom, and this was a guy who actively said that he wanted to ban M16s, semi-automatic rifles. And when he was in the congressional hearing for being appointed, he couldn't answer why. It's like he was asked by many members of the Senate, okay, what authorization does the government have to suddenly deny American citizens the right to defend themselves? He had absolutely no answer for it. He couldn't justify it. He was just a political agent. We hire by our elected votes the people who get to put that guy in charge of the ATF so then he can turn around and hire Lois Lerner like individuals who have the same ideology, so that they can then go through the system and turn the system against us. So your vote is important. Who we elect is important, because it's not I'm going to change the ATF tomorrow. I'm going to change direction of the ATF tomorrow and the next decade afterwards, if you see what I mean.
To a certain extent. But a lot of what's going on in the ATF, USDA, and other agencies are being done by people that aren't being appointed with each administration.
Sure.
Okay. Most of that work, most of the laws, regulations, whatever you want to call them, that are being enacted not by the directors, not by the assistant directors. They're being enacted by third, fourth, fifth level down employees.
Right. But they were given the green light by the director of the department, the FBI.
Not in all cases.
Not in all cases. They're not. But, if I create an environment, as an example, under Merrick Garland, if I'm encouraging that American citizens who are concerned about their children in schools, and they're concerned about the education of their kids in schools, which is their right, and it's a local, if not state issue, and Merrick Garland saying, no, the federal government wants to impose this on them. And then we see from Alaska, a local FBI director or local agency headquarters goes out and says, okay, and he presents to the prosecutors, here's a list of the 13 crimes we would want that the FBI would support you attacking American citizens with, and punishing them for paying attention to their schools and what's happening in their school board. See, he created that environment, because they didn't just do that just because of giggles on their part. They did it because he created the environment and said, hey, why don't we go after parents? Why don't we threaten them for daring to question what their kids are learning, to question or to make and reinforce that their school is a local issue, if not a state issue, and not federal. See, that's where he creates that environment, and that environment corrupts everything else inside it. That's my point, if it makes sense.
Well, and to me it does, because that would bring into the effect to me of why you hear more of them talking about, well, the UN says, the WEF says. I mean, yeah, more three-letter words, but agencies, but everybody is placed there for a reason.
Yeah. So again, I'm not disagreeing with you, Mike. I'm well, not entirely. I'm disagreeing with a certain aspect of it. I think there is a counter.
I agree to you to an extent.
Right.
Okay.
And that's fine. Yeah.
With the exception of, look at under the Trump administration.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And how these various agencies, DOJ, FBI, et cetera, that were supposed to be under the control of this administration, were specifically targeting the very administration.
Because of those agents that have been put in place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think you guys are saying it just in different ways. I think you guys agree just in different ways, the way you're explaining it.
Yeah, I think so. It's just, it's one of those things. But that's why we have the conversation.
Well, exactly. Okay, and that's also, we need to raise this awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that your vote is important. Okay, because the only way that this is going to change is to have the right representatives in office to actually enact laws to start, like I said, actually doing the oversight. Okay, by controlling the purse string that give these various agencies the funding that they get. Okay, that's where your vote is important. However, too many of these agencies, it's just a line item on a budget sheet, okay, that gets pushed through because, God forbid, we shut down the government. Okay, and most of the people that are representing us don't even know how this money is being spent. Rand Paul is great at pointing this out.
Speaking of that, you guys know that they have a stopgap bill coming up, don't you?
Yeah.
They got to pass it in the lame duck session.
And it's going to be, well, we already know what's going to happen. Debt ceiling's going to be raised again.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to give more to Ukraine.
Again.
Okay. More, I mean, for what? Ukraine, not even a year old, and it's already spent well over the yearly operating budget of the United States when we're in Afghanistan and Iraq, both. Okay, and Ukraine's received more money than was needed to operate a year in both Afghanistan and Iraq.
Well, what gets me is, how do they justify spending all this money? They're not part of the UN. We're backing a war.
Yes, this is a proxy war. We've been in a proxy war. It's an economic war. That's all it's been. That's why Biden was threatening the economy of Russia, not Russia itself. his warning was always about the look back a year ago. It's been a year now, believe it. It's been so long. A year ago to the day, the first thing that Biden said, which was about this same time, he said, if Russia would be satisfied and if Ukraine would allow it, just give them the southern and eastern portion of Ukraine, and it's all done. When Russia was pushing back on that, when Ukraine was pushing back on that, that's when he switched and said, okay, fine. Russia, if you do this, I'll destroy your economy. Your punishment's going to be your economy. That's a threat of war. That's a nation destroying another nation's economy. That's an act of war. It's part of warfare. But it wasn't conveyed that way to the public. Putin didn't care. He wasn't worried about it. So he went forward. What happened as a result? The ruble today is worth more than it was a year ago before he actually had the war. The economic warfare, the United States has lost. NATO has lost that battle. But they can't admit that. So we're going to give them more and more money. And we're going to continue to get deeper and deeper entrenched. This is economically the same thing as what we did in Vietnam. We went in for someone else. We went into a country we had nothing to do with to support a bunch of people that we had no reason to support, that had nothing to do with us whatsoever. And in doing that, because we agreed with their politics, the political advantage of it, and because we went in and did that, we then got sucked in, and then we became the front leader, the front runner of the battles, and it became our war. In Vietnam, that was France against the Viet Cong, which then morphed into Vietnam War as we know it today. Same thing here. This was Ukraine's battle. NATO stepped in. The United States, leading NATO, stepped in, made the threats, supported Ukraine, and now we're economically, the engine of Ukraine's war isn't Ukraine, it's the United States. We have given more money, 3 times as much as our next closest ally, which happens to be the UK, and more than all of NATO combined. This is a war. This is the same as Vietnam, just economic. I don't think anyone's really noticed that yet. Scary, huh? But that's it's terrifying. Again, when you think about it, and you think about it in those terms, it suddenly becomes more obvious what's happening and how it's really badly managed. Because this is exactly, literally, I think more people should make this comparison. This is literally what we did in Vietnam. It's the same way we got into Vietnam. How much money are we going to waste on this? Not that I don't want Russia to win. I also don't trust Ukraine. And it's not our war. It's not our war. But, it's frustrating. Mike went silent. You still there, Mike?
Yeah, I'm still here. I was actually looking because you brought up that this was that they're going to collapse the Russian economy. And actually, they haven't done a very good job of it.
No, they completely failed. It's
okay.
An abysmal failure.
What's that?
It's an abysmal failure. Russia's economy is stronger than it has ever been.
Yeah.
Well, recently, yeah. They're in a better position now than they were literally 1 year ago. It's such a failure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's, I mean, really, on all fronts, anything we try to do to Russia on this, other than to bog them down in Ukraine, has failed. I mean, it's been an outright failure. The only things they have done is, like I said, they have bogged them down in Ukraine, and it's actually had a worse impact on our economy and on the EU economy than it has on the Russian economy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's cratering Germany. I follow DW, Deutsche Welle. That's the German news agency. It's cratering the economy in Germany. We've got Poland. People are freezing. They're almost at riots, trying to get coal, actual lumps of coal, so that they can burn it because they're freezing. Their people are already starting to freeze to death. Yeah, we're watching. Russia's just going to bank on this. Economically, this war is over. Russia's winning this war.
Yeah.
And there's no end in sight. This is
No, there isn't.
multi-year. Yeah, this war is going to last for three to 5 years. I've always said that from day one, from before day one. I've said this is going to last 3 to 5 years, and there's nothing that seems like it. So imagine 3 to 5 years of spending about $70 billion a year on the Ukraine.
No, I come back to this, and people can call me a conspiracy theorist on this all they want. But I kind of wonder if this isn't, again, a move to collapse currency-based economies.
Well, they're
Okay.
rolling out that digital dollar.
Well, that's the thing, is even with the digital dollar, okay, they need, in order to create quote unquote equity and make everybody have the same equity, you have to do away with currency based economies. You have to change it into a social based economy. Okay, that is, again, the only way to have equity. And as I mentioned this either last week or the week before, the only way to have equity is if everybody has nothing.
Yeah. 2 weeks ago. Yep.
Well, and Schwab
Okay,
has said,
and the only way for everybody to have nothing is to collapse currency based economies.
well, Schwab has come out and said it several times. They, we don't want you to own anything. We want the government to have it all.
Yeah, it's insane.
And he's not elected in any way, shape, or form.
Anywhere. He's not elected anywhere.
Soros, before I die, I'm going to ruin America.
Davos.
Yeah, good old Davos.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say, because I know we're probably going to be signing off soon.
Yeah, we're going to be closing it up soon.
Doll, thank you for being in chat, because when I'm live, unless you're here, chat's awfully quiet.
Yes, we do appreciate Doll and all the comments he has. He brings up some great points and counterpoints for our discussions. So we do appreciate Doll. And we do appreciate Jan being on the show tonight. And we appreciate Jan when she's in the chat because she offers a lot of insight and things that sometimes we miss. We do appreciate both of them. They've both been great supporters of ours through the years, and we do appreciate them for sure.
Well, I'm actually glad we hooked back up when we did, because when I started my Constitutional Patriots on Facebook, I think we started doing some really good things together.
We did.
And because of being a Trump supporter and all the things that actually you helped write our mission statement with James. It was a real shame when Facebook shut me down.
Yeah, and it's a shame that Facebook has shut down a lot of groups. And I'm actually surprised that we've actually lasted as long as we have, honestly. Now, my personal page has been shut down a few times.
Oh yeah,
But-
everybody who was an admin or a moderator on the group got their
Mhm.
pages shut down.
Yeah,
Yep.
that happened to me.
That was one time when I had page shut down, and I had my personal page shut down again, or my personal account shut down again prior to that.
Yeah.
Happens to me all the time.
And
Kicked off a Discord, been shut down on Facebook. YouTube gives me suspensions on a regular the last 2 years. Oh yeah, I know the feeling, guys. It it doesn't get easier. They're
no, it
afraid.
doesn't.
They're afraid.
So they
These
are
are
okay,
tactics of fear.
and
Well, I
We
think anybody that was born after the mid to late 70s, they sure try to keep our mouths shut because we were the ones that were actually taught about our rights in schools.
mhm. and we need to get back to that and bringing up that and I still have to get the link up on the website, but we have partnered with the Tuttle Twins. Okay. And if you want to really educate your children about the rights that are protected under the Constitution and a lot of other civic responsibilities, the Tuttle Twins is a great source of that information. Another way to teach the youth of America about the history of America is through a group on YouTube called the Liberty Kids. Both of them are great organizations for teaching kids, and we need to start doing that. We need to start concentrating our effort not on the generation Gen X and that. Okay, we need to start concentrating our efforts on the preschoolers, the grade schoolers, okay, and teaching them about the history of America, about the Constitution, about knowing how to protect their rights and how to become civically engaged. Okay, and we need to start that at an early age so that it becomes a part of them when they do become adults.
I would also suggest go buy Schoolhouse Rock.
Yes, love that.
Go buy Schoolhouse Rock.
Yep, Schoolhouse Rock was awesome. It was on every Saturday, and I hate that they quit that. Schoolhouse Rock was awesome, and I would love to start seeing it come back.
No, I want to see the originals come back, not
Yes.
anything new,
Mhm.
not a revisioning of it. The originals
No.
from the 70s that were informative, educational, fun to watch, and non-partisan.
Well, that's it exactly. Schoolhouse Rock was nonpartisan, and it taught what civic engagement was, what it was. Okay, it taught you about the Constitution. It taught you about what happened in early American history, and we need to get back to that. We need to start understanding that the Constitution isn't there for the left or the right. The Constitution is there for the people. Okay. And hence why it starts off we the people. Okay.
Yep.
It's not for government, it is for us. And it is our means of controlling the government. And we need to restore that foundation. We need to start a foundation of America is the people, it's not the government.
Yeah.
Okay. With that, we're going to go ahead and say goodnight. I do want to invite everybody to find us on Facebook, find us on YouTube. You can find us under the Liberty First Foundation. I want you to also visit our website, okay, at l1f.us. While you're there, okay, join up. Join with the Liberty First Foundation. Okay, who knows? You may be the happy owner of a Henry Golden Boy rifle.
Custom Henry.
Custom engraved with Liberty First Foundation. Okay. We're also working on some other promotions that we're going to be doing after this membership drive, and we are working on a lot of things that are going to be only available to our paid members. Okay, because
Not to mention
they,
dolls patches.
yep, dolls patches are coming online too. But when you do become a paid member, it shows us that you are dedicated to the cause of restoring the Constitution. You're dedicated to actually taking and being involved with the government, okay, and how you are governed. And that's what we need. Okay, we need people that are dedicated to this fight. And with that, I want to thank everybody that watched tonight. I want to thank everybody that shares, comments, likes our posts. Thank you guys. That is a help. It does help us get our message out. I want to say good night, and I want to ask you guys to join us again next week, Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We will be back. Thank you, everybody.
Night, guys.
Night.